Hello, Internet. Greetings. Happy 3rd of July, 2014. This is the weekly Backdrop meeting where we get together and talk about how Backdrop is proceeding and trying to aim forward towards our release. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Backdrop, Backdrop is a Drupal fork, and we have forked the Drupal project because we believe that there is a cost that comes with change, and the Drupal 8 release cycle basically changed too much and in a lot of directions that we didn't agree with. So we've got some different philosophies from the Drupal project, and we're taking Drupal in a different direction, and that new direction is called Backdrop. So what we're aiming to do with the initial release of Backdrop is to provide Drupal 8 comparable features, or comparable features, like a similar set features, on a Drupal 7-like architecture. We also want to include all of the bug fixes from Drupal 7 and Drupal 8 and our own fixes, and we want to simplify existing systems as much as possible. We're also looking at adding a bunch of new features very similar to what Drupal 8 has, although given our timeline, we're descoping a whole bunch of things right now to make it so that we can get out a release and get out Backdrop into the wild. So timeline-wise, we're still shooting to aim to release Backdrop 1.0 sometime this summer, which means that we're really kind of running out of time. And in order to meet that goal, we're working on descoping things as much as possible, as well as finishing up all of the conversions that we have in place so we can get a stable release out there. So, but even if we release Backdrop 1.0 this summer and it doesn't have a bunch of the features that we hoped it would, we have a different release cycle from Drupal itself where we plan on having regular releases on like a 3 to 4 month basis, basically. So if we don't get in all of the features we wanted right away, that's okay. We're just going to continue iterating on minor releases as we go forward. So let's see, then we're going to go through our project progress report, say how we're proceeding on each of our initiatives. We've got 3 major projects that we're working on in Backdrop: blocks and layouts, views and core, and configuration management. And so for the first of those, blocks and layouts is issue 86 in the Backdrop issue queue. Status update on that is I haven't had a lot of progress since last week, but we're still moving forward on building out the new layout module. We've got the module integrated with the dialog system. When you create a new layout, it saves to the configuration system. It saves the layout and a menu item. And we're working on the actual interface to lay out blocks in layouts at this point. So things are coming along okay, but if you want to see progress on that and where the code currently is, it's not in pull request form because it's not yet functional, but the issue is issue 86. Next issue, views and core. So views has been in Backdrop core for many months now, and we're working on finishing it up by converting the remaining pages into views. The issue for that is issue 151. We still need some help in moving those conversions forward. If anybody's interested in converting things like our listings and administration pages into views, that's been a long-standing issue that hasn't had any forward momentum in quite a while. Let's see, configuration management, the last major initiative. We've got all of the base system of configuration management in place, including the user interface and the importing, exporting tools, saving to JSON files, and all of that sort of thing. And we've got a couple of base systems converted: views, image styles, contact module, and a few of the variables pages. I would say the configuration management conversions are the biggest holdup for our 1.0 release, and we still have quite a few of them to get through. The issue for that is issue 169 that lists all of the meta issues that all of the subsystems that need to be converted. We recently had one of our high school drop turns, Paul, or Hello Mr. Cat, who is joining us. He's taking on converting a whole bunch of the variables to CMI right now, which is issue 170. Do you want to give an update, Paul, on how that's been going and any questions or problems you've been running into?
Yeah, so I've just been working on it for the past 2 days, but so far I've been working on converting cron variables and site information to configuration. Um, and what else did you want me to go over?
Yeah, let's see. Which ones have you got on your plate coming up for this week? Like how do you think you're feeling about the number that you could do at a time and things like that? I know you just got started, so maybe it's
Yeah.
too early to be making estimates.
Um, yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, I've kind of just been going through them one at a time for now, but I
Okay.
assume that I'll get more efficient at doing them as time goes on. So
Yeah,
hopefully.
awesome. Well, it's pretty sweet that you got the first one done. I mean, you just started yesterday and you've already got one done, and you're already working on the second one. So,
I think I'm probably close to finished with that one. I'm just having like one syntax error thing that I messed up somewhere. I'm trying to find. Sneaky bug.
awesome. Yeah, great to see those moving forward. Thanks a lot for taking those.
Of course.
Okay, so those are the major initiatives and the status on them. We also have a bunch of, well, we've got minor projects, and we also have this section for keeping up with Drupal. We want to make sure that when Backdrop is released, that all of the features and functionality that have gone into at least Drupal 7, that we're keeping up with all of it, so people aren't regressing in any way when they upgrade their sites from Drupal 7. And we've got a couple of different meta issues for that in the agenda, including all of the security fixes. We've got all of the security fixes in every version of Drupal 7 ported to Backdrop and included, with the exception of one that has to do with image styles. And we're still looking at possible ways that we could solve that problem without using the same solution that Drupal 7 used, which broke a whole bunch of sites. So still looking at solutions there. We've only got one of the original meta issues left. Issue 132 is the list of all Drupal 7 backports. We had 3 original issues, each one that contained about 200 backports. And we finished the first 2 of those, and we're about, looks like about, I don't know, 4/5 of the way through this last one, issue 132. And that mostly just contains like documentation fixes and cleanup to tests and things like that. So we're doing a pretty good job of keeping up in the overall issues. We made another issue recently for backporting all of 7.24 to 7.27, and we're 50 out of 88 through that issue as well, issue 222. And then finally, Gore, who's joining us on this hangout today, made a new issue just yesterday for backporting all of 7.28's fixes. And so far, that's going along swimmingly with 21 of 34 of those patches already into a pull request. So thanks a lot, Gore, for making that issue and for doing those backports. It's really appreciated. Yeah, it's issue 262. Yeah, and some of those issues were 21 out of 34, but a lot of the remaining ones have actually already been done as part of other backports or as part of other things that we've been doing in Backdrop. Since we've been backporting things from Drupal 8 as well as from Drupal 7, sometimes what happens is we've already backported it from one branch or the other. So when we go through these lists, we find out that we've already done a lot of the work, which is always nice. So that's it for Drupal 7 crossports, which we're keeping up with just fantastic. And then in the Drupal 8 land backports, we've got 3 categories in the agenda at least. We want to make sure we get all of these at least. And that's mostly front-end backports, things like HTML5, which is issue 200. We've got pretty much all of the HTML5 form elements backported, things like number and color and range and all of the fields that are in HTML5, those are all backported. And we've got most of the markup changes as well, using things like section and sidebar and article and all of those HTML5 tags. We've got an issue also for both CSS and JavaScript, both of which are 3/4 of the way done. Issue 207 is for CSS, and issue 211 is for JavaScript. And both of those, we're kind of just going through and picking and choosing the ones that make sense for Backdrop and making sure that all of those things get included. There's a bunch of other things that we're also backporting from Drupal 8, kind of a la carte. Anything that makes sense to backport, if we get a pull request for it, then of course we'll merge it in. But there's just a huge number of Drupal 8 things that will never make it back into Backdrop because it's some of the differences that we have in the direction of the project. So doing a really great job pulling things back, but our main focus really is on fulfilling the major initiatives and making it so that we can get our initial release out. So other minor projects that we're working on to do as much as we can before release, we're continuing to separate the identity from Drupal in order to make it so that Backdrop has its own identity separate from Drupal in the future and can be like a real sustainable project. We're working on making it so that Backdrop really can live a life on its own. So some of the ways we're doing that is we're working on a new style guide for the administration theme, which is issue 139. And we've got some progress there. We've got a start and a designer who has been working on building on a new admin style guide. But so far, I don't know, work has been a little bit slow on that. We'll have to see if that style guide can be completed and then implemented before we get release. And then once we have the style guide, yeah, then we'll need to implement it as a separate issue, which is issue 201. Let's see, user experience improvements. This first one is near and dear to my heart, which is a rich text editor in core. Our plan is to include all of the CK editor and filter module enhancements into Backdrop. That was something I was really involved in the Drupal 8 cycle, and we'd really like to include that in the initial release of Backdrop as well. We've already got some of the underpinnings in place. Things like the dialog API was a critical piece of functionality that was needed in order to implement the WYSIWYG in core, and we've got the dialog system in core, which is great for establishing some of the baseline functionality that we need. That's issue 101 if anyone is interested in taking a look at backporting CK editor module into Backdrop. Let's see. Other things in user experience land, we're also looking at terminology updates. Drupal 8 rearranged some things in terms of like what certain things were called and where they're located. And we're looking at trying to simplify a lot of those things as well in issue 127. Some of the things that we're doing things like taking the permissions and moving it under user settings instead of under people, because right now, like, it doesn't really make any sense that permissions are located under people instead of under account settings, which is what permissions actually are. Doing things like potentially renaming the modules page. I don't know, there's a whole lot of discussion going on there around what terminology should be. Now that we've got admin module in core that has a search box in it, we're hoping that the way a lot of people navigate around in Backdrop is by using the search in the administration bar. But having the search work means that we need to use the terminology that people are expecting. So in some cases, we can get the best of both worlds by doing things like having a parent menu item be called like extend, for example, like Drupal 8, but then having the first sub-item be modules. And that way people can search for either term and both will match in the search. I don't know, lots of things going on in there. You can read about it in issue 127. Let's see, and finally, theme system cleanup. Jen Lampton isn't with us this week. She's competing in a horse competition in Canada, but she's taking a lead on cleaning up the theme system. In Drupal 8 land, they switched the entire theme layer to use Twig, which Jen was the initiative lead for. And in Backdrop land, we're not pursuing Twig because of our commitment to compatibility with existing Drupal sites. The scope of change that we already have is already significant enough that we can't rewrite the entire theme layer and have that fit within our principles. However, we can clean up the theme layer a whole bunch by reducing the number of templates, consolidating the theme functions, doing that sort of thing. So we're applying the same principles that were applied to the Twig initiative to Backdrop, but we're sticking with PHP-based templates. All right, that's it for minor projects. We have a section in the agenda every week to talk about anything from the Project Management Committee. The Project Management Committee currently consists of just Jen and myself, where we handle any conflict resolution or any decision making. Anything that gets stuck within the project that gets escalated, then we can discuss it and release decisions. We haven't ever had anything in this section yet because our community is small enough and we haven't had any real disagreements. But in the future, if such a thing were to be escalated, we would discuss it at this point. Okay, besides the project itself, we've got a bunch of peripheral projects that we're also working on. Things like websites and community tools and all of the pieces that we need around the software itself. We're working on rolling out a new API website, api.backdropcms.org, which is, we have a separate issue queue for managing everything in the backdropcms.org process. So we have a separate issue for that, issue 15 in the backdropcms.org issue queue. To set up this API website. The good news, this week, hooray, we have a new site that is in progress. Luke, who volunteered to do it ages ago, got around to actually building out the new API website. It's hosted at a temporary URL right now, which we can put in the notes of this meetup. It's also in the agenda. And it's looking really good. He just built it out from a Drupal 7 site using the API distribution, and it's looking fantastic. It already includes all of the API documentation, so it's identical, basically, to api.drupal.org and its functionality. But we're planning on using the API website for more than just function documentation, like reading the code and then turning it into docs. We're planning on combining all actual code documentation into this website as well as change logs. And so that functionality we're still working on building out, but we'll probably be moving that site to api.backdropcms.org in the very near term. The next item we have is we're working on trying to figure out or try to build out an update server needed for updates to modules, so that when you install Backdrop, it asks you, if you want to report your usage to backdropcms.org. But that doesn't yet go anywhere. It currently still connects to Drupal.org, and will unfortunately tell you that your version of your CMS is out of date because Backdrop is version 1.0, and obviously there's a lot newer versions of Drupal in 1.0. So we're working on making it so that all of those updates actually get reported to a central server, which means that we need to somehow build a similar solution to Drupal.org, probably using the same code that Drupal uses to keep track of whether or not modules have new releases or not. We don't have any progress on that at this point. If anyone's interested in volunteering for that, we're more than happy to help you bootstrap and get started on that. So speaking of keeping things updated, we also want a way to manage our contributed modules. And our plan is to host contributed modules on GitHub, but then connect them to a central repository via a GitHub service. So under the GitHub preferences for any project, you can enable a service that basically pings some central server whenever something happens, whether that's like a new pull request comes in or a new release is made. And what we're hoping to do is use GitHub for package management, use their tools for creating releases and issue queues and things like that, but then synchronize that with the central backdropcms.org server. And then that's how we will report updates from our central server based on projects that are hosted in GitHub. So that's the plan, and we've actually got a couple of services that integrate with GitHub already, or webhooks that integrate with GitHub. And we're looking at expanding that out. Building a service for GitHub usually means writing something in Node.js. So if we have any Node.js aficionados out there that are interested in helping build out this service, we'd be more than happy to accept your help. That's in the backdropcms.org issue queue, issue number 8. Let's see, and finally, work on the flagship site itself, backdropcms.org. We are wanting to pursue an updated redesign. Right now, our site is basically a wireframe-based site, but we'd like to fill that out with a full redesign. Right now, our logo isn't even used on the website, so at the very least, we'd like to get it incorporated. Once we have Backdrop released, we'll also roll out things like a showcase section. Right now, there isn't anything to showcase because there aren't any sites. And of course, the modules and themes section for actually building out, or for browsing the available modules and themes, needs to be built out on the site as well. So that's it for our updates in terms of where we are on the project. We always like to remind people that we have a sprint every Thursday today after the weekly meeting. So I'm going to be in the queue reviewing things and posting things, and if you have any questions, you can ping me on IRC, quick sketch, and I'd be happy to bootstrap you. We're always in IRC in #backdrop on Freenode. Let's see, and we've got a couple of events that we're going to be at. Jen and I are both going to be at DrupalCorn in Des Moines, Iowa. We're going to be a keynote speakers, and you can catch us there. And we're also going to be speaking at Twin Cities Drupal Camp, also on Backdrop. So if you're interested in meeting with us in person and you're in either of those locations in the Midwest, we'd love to see you. Let's see. Finally, some other events and things in publicity that we're working on. We will be at DrupalCon Amsterdam. We're not doing any official talks, but we might have a Birds of a Feather talk, or we'll be there to meet up if you want to in September. And of course, we'll be at Bad Camp. Jen's one of the primary organizers for Bad Camp in November here in the Bay Area, and we'll be giving another talk then. Let's see, we've got some plans to speak at user groups. If anyone out there is also interested in talking about Backdrop at a user group, we'd be more than happy to provide you with slides and information about Backdrops that you can give a talk at your own local meetup. And finally, we have an article in the latest edition of Drupal Watchdog. The entire magazine is the Drupal 8 edition, but after you go through the 60 pages of Drupal 8 content, there's a nice full-length article on Backdrop. It's the last article in the whole magazine. So good publicity, getting the word out there, and we got a lot of really great feedback from that article. So that's it for the publicity section. At the end of our meetings, we like to open it up and see if anybody has any questions or any general chatter they'd like to talk about. We've got a couple of attendees here. You guys have anything to add or any questions or anything that we should add to our weekly calls? And going. Okay, thanks. A couple of our guys are on slow connection, so they're chatting instead of talking. So, all right, well, that's it for our weekly meetup. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining, and thanks, everybody, for watching. And we'll see you guys next week and on the internet.